Doctor mocks janitor until he hears the greatest lesson of his life. Dr. William Harrison couldn't stop laughing as he watched the man on his knees in the hallway, scrubbing the floor with excessive dedication for such a simple task. His laughter echoed through the corridors of Mercy General Hospital in New York City, making other staff members bow their heads in embarrassment. "Look at this, Mark," the doctor shouted to his passing colleague. "Our janitor here thinks he can clean a stain even the strongest chemicals couldn't remove." What a joke. Robert Johnson, 38, didn't lift his eyes from the floor. His calloused hands kept moving the cloth in circles, ignoring the laughter from above. The metal bucket beside him held a mixture he had prepared himself, a recipe he'd learned from his grandmother years ago. Dr. William's white lab coat fluttered with the force of his laughter, and his slightly protruding belly shook as he leaned against the wall to keep his balance. "Doctor, maybe you shouldn't," Nurse Sarah began, but she was cut off by the doctor's abrupt gesture. "Sarah, let the man work," he continued, laughing. "Maybe he's got some magical secret we, with all our university degrees, don't know about." Robert paused for a moment, feeling the weight of the stares from the crowd now gathered in the hallway. Mercy General Hospital was known for its rigid hierarchy, where doctors like Dr. William ruled supreme. At 52, William had built a reputation as an excellent cardiologist, but also as an arrogant man who never missed a chance to humiliate those he deemed beneath him. The janitor returned to work, his hands now trembling slightly. This wasn't the first time he'd endured this. For 3 years he'd worked at the hospital, always keeping his head down, doing his job diligently, yet never escaping Dr. William's cruel jokes. "You know what, Robert?" the doctor said, stepping closer. "You should stop wasting time on that stain. Just yesterday I told the board we need a more professional cleaning service here." The words hit Robert like a punch to the gut. He needed that job more than anything in the world. His 12-year-old daughter Emma relied entirely on him since Jennifer was no longer with them. The janitor's salary barely covered their basic needs, but it was all he had. "Sorry, doctor," Robert murmured, his voice barely audible. "I'll try to work faster." "Faster!" Dr. William burst into laughter again. "You don't get it, Robert. It's not about speed, it's about competence. Some people are born to be doctors, others to clean up after them." Nurse Sarah walked away, clearly uncomfortable. Other staff members who had stopped to watch also began to disperse, some shaking their heads in disapproval, but none daring to confront the powerful cardiologist. Robert took a deep breath and kept working. The stain on the floor was stubborn. It had been caused by a spilled medication during an emergency procedure the week before. 3 different cleaning companies had already failed to remove it. But Robert had a different theory about its origin, and more importantly, how to get rid of it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now back to the story. As Robert worked silently, Dr. William leaned against the wall, crossed his arms, and turned the scene into a spectacle for passers-by. His expression was pure amusement, as if he were watching a free comedy show. "You know, Robert," the doctor continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "my son Michael is graduating from medical school this year. I always tell him the difference between people like us and people like you is simple. We study, we dedicate ourselves, we earn our place in society through merit. You do what you can." Robert stopped scrubbing for a moment. His back ached from bending over, but it wasn't the physical pain that bothered him most at that moment. It was the feeling that every word from Dr. William was being heard by other hospital staff, painting him as incompetent, someone who didn't deserve respect. "Dr. William," came a firm voice from the end of the hallway. It was Dr. Emily Thompson, the only doctor at the hospital who treated all staff equally. "Don't you have surgery in 20 minutes? "I do, Emily. I was just observing our friend here at his artistry." Dr. William let out one last laugh before walking away. "Good luck with that stain, Robert. I'm sure with a few more hours, you'll get it. Or not." The sound of the doctor's footsteps echoed down the hall until they faded completely. Robert was left alone with his task, the weight of humiliation pressing on his shoulders. Dr. Emily crouched beside him. "Robert, you don't have to put up with this," she said quietly. I can speak to the board about Dr. Williams' behavior. No, Doctor, Robert replied quickly, looking up for the first time. Please don't. I need this job. If he finds out you said anything. Dr. Emily saw the genuine fear in the janitor's eyes and understood the delicate position he was in. Dr. William had enough influence at the hospital to make any employee's life miserable, or even get them fired on false grounds. I understand, she said, placing a gentle hand on Robert's shoulder. But know that not everyone here thinks like him. You're an excellent worker, Robert. I've seen you at it, always dedicated and careful. After Dr. Emily walked away, Robert turned his attention back to the stain. He had studied its chemical composition carefully over the past few days, using knowledge few people knew he had. The mixture he'd prepared wasn't just water and ordinary detergent. It contained a specific combination of compounds that, if his theory was correct, should break down the molecules of the medication that had created this seemingly impossible stain. As he worked, Robert couldn't stop thinking about his daughter. Emma was in 7th grade and always asked why he came home so tired and sometimes sad. He never told her about the humiliations at work, always making excuses about the physical demands of the job. She was his only motivation to endure it all. 3 hours later, when Robert finally stood up, the stain was completely gone. The floor shone as if it were new, with no trace of the spill that had resisted all previous treatments. He packed his supplies into the bucket and headed to the cleaning closet, feeling a small personal satisfaction that no one else would share. The next day, Dr. William arrived at the hospital as usual, confident and arrogant. As he walked down the hallway where he had mocked Robert the day before, he stopped abruptly. The floor was spotless. He bent down, running his hand over the surface where the stubborn stain had been, unable to believe his eyes. "Sarah," he called to a passing nurse, "what happened here? Who cleaned this floor?" "It was Robert, Doctor. Yesterday, right after you left." Dr. William fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information. He had categorically stated that the stain was impossible to remove, had publicly mocked Robert's attempt, and now was seeing the opposite of what he had predicted. He must have used some strong chemical, he muttered, more to himself than to Sarah. Probably something that could have damaged the floor. But as he looked closer, he had to admit the floor wasn't just clean, it was also preserved. There were no signs of damage or wear that harsh chemicals would normally cause. Over the following days, Dr. William began noticing other things about Robert that had previously gone unnoticed. The janitor always arrived 15 minutes early, stayed late when needed, and had an impressive knowledge of medical equipment maintenance. More than once, specialized technicians had called Robert to help with problems they couldn't solve themselves. But the doctor's pride was too great to admit he had underestimated someone. Instead of acknowledging Robert's work, Dr. William began searching for flaws in everything the janitor did, as if determined to prove his initial assessment correct. "Robert!" he shouted one Thursday morning. "Come here now!" The janitor set aside the broom he was using in the hallway and hurried to where Dr. William was calling him. The doctor stood at the door of one of the operating rooms, his face twisted in anger. "Did you clean this room last night?" he demanded, pointing inside. "Yes, doctor, like always." "Then explain to me why there's dust on this shelf." "Doctor." William ran his finger along a small high surface, showing a barely visible amount of dust. "This is unacceptable in a surgical environment." Robert looked at the shelf. It was a hard-to-reach spot, nearly 10 feet up, where rarely used supplies were stored. The dust was so minimal, it would have been almost impossible to notice without close inspection. "Sorry, doctor. I'll clean it right away." "No, you won't." Dr. William raised his voice. "You'll clean the entire room again, and I want you to think about what professional responsibility means." Several staff members passing by stopped to listen. Robert felt his cheeks burn with shame, but nodded silently and went inside to start the full cleaning. As he worked, Robert couldn't understand Dr. Williams' obsession with humiliating him publicly. There was something beyond simple arrogance in that behavior, something personal he couldn't quite place. What Robert didn't know was that Dr. William was going through a deep personal crisis. His 25-year marriage was falling apart. His son Michael had chosen to specialize in social medicine, a field William considered inferior. And recently, he had received a diagnosis that had shaken him to the core. 2 weeks earlier, during routine tests, doctors had detected a heart condition that could end his surgical career. The irony was that Dr. William, a renowned cardiologist, now had to face problems in his own heart. The news had been devastating. His entire identity was built around his medical competence, his status at the hospital, his intellectual superiority over others. The possibility of losing it all was eating him alive, and he channeled his frustration by attacking those he saw as most vulnerable. That night, after another day of humiliation, Robert came home exhausted. His small house on the outskirts of New York City was modest, but well kept. Emma sat at the kitchen table, doing homework under the dim yellow light of the room's only lamp. "Hi, Dad," she said, looking up from her books. "How was work today?" "It went fine, Princess," Robert lied as usual. "And you? How was school?" Emma hesitated for a moment before answering. She was a smart and perceptive girl, aware that her father wasn't telling the truth about work, but she also understood he was trying to protect her from something. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Why do you never talk about what really happens at your job?" The question caught Robert off guard. He sat beside his daughter, looking into her big brown eyes that reminded him so much of Jennifer's. "What do you mean? You always come home tired, sometimes sad, but when I ask you say everything's fine. But I noticed, Dad, I'm not a little kid anymore." Robert felt a tightness in his chest. Emma really was growing up, and he didn't want her to lose her innocence so soon, but he also didn't want to lie to her. "Work is complicated sometimes, Emma, but it's important that I keep this job to take care of you." "Is someone mean to you there?" His daughter's direct question left him speechless. He didn't know how to explain the situation without making her feel guilty about him enduring humiliation for her sake. Some people are difficult to deal with, but that's not important. What matters is that we're together, and that you're studying and growing up well. Emma placed her hand over her father's. It was a gesture too mature for her age, but she'd learned to be strong very early. "Dad, you're the smartest person I know. If someone doesn't see that, that's their problem, not yours." His daughter's words touched Robert deeply. For years he'd questioned himself, wondering if he truly deserved the treatment he received, if maybe Dr. William was right about his incompetence. "Thank you, Princess. You always know what to say." "It's because I learned from you," Emma said, turning back to her homework. "And Dad?" "Yes? One day I'm going to be a doctor, and I'll treat everyone with respect no matter what job they do." Robert smiled for the first time in days. The determination in his daughter's voice filled him with pride and hope. The next day, Friday, Robert arrived at the hospital with renewed energy. Emma's words echoed in his mind, reminding him of his own worth. He'd made a decision overnight. He wouldn't let Dr. Williams' humiliations make him doubt himself anymore. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. That morning, Robert worked with his usual efficiency, but with a slightly different posture. He stood taller, more confident in his movements. Some staff noticed the change, though they couldn't quite explain what it was. Around 10 o'clock, Dr. William appeared in the hallway where Robert was cleaning the windows. The doctor was visibly irritated, clutching some papers in one hand and speaking loudly on the phone. "No, I won't accept that excuse," he barked into the phone. "I want those results today, not Monday." When he ended the call, he looked around for someone to take out his frustration on. His eyes landed on Robert, who kept working on the windows without turning around. "Robert," he shouted, "you're doing that wrong." For the first time in 3 years, Robert didn't immediately stop what he was doing when Dr. William yelled. He finished cleaning the section of the window he was working on before turning around. "How can I help you, doctor?" "What do you mean? How can you help me?" Dr. William stepped closer, clearly surprised by the calm response. "I'm telling you, you're cleaning these windows wrong." Robert looked at the windows he'd cleaned. They were spotless, without a single mark or smudge. He knew Dr. William was just looking for reasons to criticize him. Could you explain the specific problem, Doctor, so I can fix it? The direct yet polite question left Dr. William momentarily speechless. He had grown used to Robert's immediate, submissive apologies. This new attitude made him uncomfortable. The problem is, it's that, Dr. William stammered, searching for something specific to criticize. You're using too much product, it leaves streaks. Robert glanced at the windows again, then looked the doctor straight in the eye. Doctor, with all due respect, there are no streaks on these windows. If you could show me exactly where you see an issue, I'd be happy to correct it. The calm in Robert's voice contrasted sharply with Dr. William's growing agitation. Some staff passing through the hallway began to slow their pace, sensing something unusual was happening. Are you questioning me? Dr. William raised his voice further. A simple janitor is questioning a doctor. I'm not questioning you, Doctor. I'm just asking for clarification on how I can improve my work. Robert's professional and respectful reply put Dr. William in a difficult position. He couldn't accuse the janitor of disrespect or insubordination. Technically, Robert was being entirely professional. You're different today, Dr. William muttered, more confused than angry now. I'm doing my job the same as always. Doctor. Just then, Dr. Richard Miller, the hospital's medical director, appeared in the hallway. A man around 60, respected by all staff for his fair leadership. Dr. William, is there a problem here? He asked, noticing the tension. No problem at all, Robert answered before Dr. William could speak. I was just getting guidance on how to improve my work. Dr. Richard glanced at the windows Robert had cleaned, then at Dr. William's puzzled expression. The windows look excellent, Robert, as always. Dr. William, could we speak privately for a moment? The two doctors stepped aside, leaving Robert alone to continue his work. He couldn't hear their conversation, but noticed Dr. Richard speaking sternly, while Dr. William merely nodded. When Dr. Richard walked away, Dr. William returned to where Robert stood, but his demeanor had shifted slightly. Less aggressive, more hesitant. Robert, he began, then stopped as if unsure what to say. Yes, Doctor. Just carry on with your work. Dr. William quickly walked off, leaving Robert puzzled by the sudden change in behavior. What he didn't know was that Dr. Richard had given Dr. William a firm warning about his treatment of staff, mentioning several complaints about his recent attitude. At lunch, Robert sat alone in the small break area for support staff, a simple space with plastic tables and a coffee machine that rarely worked. He was eating a sandwich from home when Dr. Emily approached. Mind if I join you? She asked, holding a tray with salad. Of course, Doctor. Dr. Emily sat quietly for a few seconds, as if carefully choosing her words. Robert, I heard you had an interesting conversation with Dr. William today. Not sure interesting is the right word, Doctor. How did you feel when he criticized your work without clear reason? Robert stopped chewing and looked at Dr. Emily. It was a direct, personal question from someone who rarely strayed from professional topics. To be honest, Doctor, I felt tired. Tired of accepting criticism that makes no sense. And what changed today? My daughter told me something yesterday that made me think. She said that if someone doesn't see my worth, that's their problem, not mine. Dr. Emily smiled, a genuine, warm smile. Your daughter is a very wise girl. And she's right. Doctor, can I ask you something? Of course. Why does Dr. William treat me this way? Am I really as incompetent as he says? Dr. Emily paused for a long moment before answering. Robert, I can assure you you're one of the most competent employees in this hospital. As for Dr. William, sometimes people lash out at others when they're dealing with their own internal struggles. What kind of struggles? I can't go into details about another doctor's personal life, but I can say that people who act cruelly aren't always cruel by nature. Sometimes they're going through difficult times and don't know how to handle it in a healthy way. Robert processed this as he finished his sandwich. The idea that Dr. William might be suffering in some way had never crossed his mind. To him, the doctor had always seemed to have a perfect life, a successful career, social status, professional recognition. That doesn't excuse his behavior, Dr. Emily continued, but sometimes understanding the context helps us not take things so personally. Thank you for telling me that, Doctor. And Robert, keep being the person you are. Don't let anyone convince you that you're worth less than you really are. After lunch, Robert returned to work with a completely new perspective. Instead of feeling anger or resentment when he thought of Dr. William, he felt something close to curiosity. What kind of problems could someone like him be facing? That afternoon, he had the chance to observe Dr. William more closely. The doctor was clearly agitated, making several phone calls with a worried expression, and Robert noticed his hands trembled slightly when he thought no one was watching. Around 4 o'clock, Robert was cleaning near Dr. William's office when he overheard a phone conversation. The door was slightly ajar and it was impossible not to hear. "No, Barbara, I can't just cancel surgeries because of my personal problems," Dr. William spoke quietly but tensely. "Patients depend on me." There was a long pause. "What do you mean you're thinking about divorce?" "Barbara, we've been married for 25 years. Can't we talk about this?" Another pause, even longer this time. "I know I haven't been a good husband lately. I know I've been difficult to live with, but I'm going through a rough patch at work and—" Dr. William's voice cracked slightly. All right. We'll talk when I get home tonight." Robert heard the phone slam down, followed by a deep, exhausted sigh. He stepped away quietly, feeling strange for having overheard something so personal. For the rest of the afternoon, Robert couldn't stop thinking about what he'd heard. Dr. William, who always seemed so in control of everything and everyone, was clearly going through a marital crisis. That explained at least part of his recent irritability. As he was getting ready to leave, Robert saw Dr. William walking out of the hospital. The doctor moved slowly, shoulders slumped, a posture completely unlike his usual arrogant confidence. For the first time, Robert saw him not as a tormentor but as a suffering human being. Over the weekend, Robert couldn't shake the image of Dr. William talking on the phone with his wife. He knew how hard it was to keep a family together when work stress took its toll. His own experience with Jennifer had taught him how external problems could affect a relationship. Jennifer had left 2 years ago, not because of his fault, but due to circumstances beyond either of their control. They had been too young when they married, with different dreams and unrealistic expectations about life. When Emma was born, they tried to make it work, but eventually realized they were hurting each other by forcing something that didn't come naturally. The difference was that, unlike what Robert imagined about Dr. William, their separation had been amicable. Jennifer remained part of Emma's life, and they had managed to maintain a respectful relationship for their daughter's sake. On Monday, Robert arrived at the hospital with a resolution. He would try to see Dr. William not as his tormentor, but as a complex human being dealing with his own struggles. This didn't mean accepting humiliation, but perhaps understanding its source better. Around 9 in the morning, Robert was organizing the cleaning supply storage when he heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. Dr. William rushed past, visibly agitated, heading toward the elevator. A few minutes later, Robert learned from Nurse Sarah that there was a cardiac emergency on the 4th floor. An hour later, when things had settled, Robert saw Dr. William coming down the stairs instead of taking the elevator. The doctor looked exhausted, his hair disheveled and his lab coat wrinkled. He leaned against the hallway wall and closed his eyes for a few seconds. Robert hesitated but decided to approach. "Doctor, are you all right?" Dr. William opened his eyes, surprised to hear the janitor's voice. "What do you want, Robert?" But his tone wasn't aggressive as usual. It was tired, almost vulnerable. "Nothing specific, Doctor. I just noticed you seem worn out." Dr. William studied Robert for a long moment, as if trying to understand why the man he had humiliated so many times was showing concern. "It was a complicated surgery," he finally said. "Young patient, sudden heart attack. We managed to save him, but—" He stopped, as if realizing he was sharing too much with someone he considered beneath him. "I'm glad you were able to save his life," Robert said sincerely. "It must be a huge responsibility, having people's lives in your hands." The remark caught Dr. William off guard. He was used to praise for his medical skills, but rarely did anyone acknowledge the emotional weight of his profession. It is a big responsibility, he admitted, his voice slightly softer. My daughter wants to be a doctor, Robert said. I always tell her it's one of the noblest professions out there. Dr. William looked at Robert with a strange expression, as if seeing the janitor for the first time. Your daughter, how old is she? 12, she's very bright, always been the top of her class. And she really wants to be a doctor? She's dreamed of it since she was little, says she wants to help people. Dr. William fell silent for a few seconds. He thought of his own son, Michael, who had chosen social medicine against his wishes, and of a janitor's daughter, who dreamed of becoming a doctor. I hope she achieves that dream, he said finally, and for the first time in 3 years his voice held no trace of sarcasm or superiority when speaking to Robert. Thank you, Doctor. I'm sure she will. Dr. William gave a brief nod and walked away, but Robert noticed his steps were less hurried, less tense than before. In the days that followed, the interactions between Robert and Dr. William shifted subtly. The doctor hadn't stopped being demanding, but the public humiliating criticisms dwindled dramatically. It was as if an invisible line of mutual respect had been drawn. Robert began noticing other aspects of Dr. William's personality that had previously gone unnoticed. The doctor was extremely dedicated to his patients, often staying late to review complicated cases, and had an impressive memory for medical details. It was clear that behind the arrogance lay a genuinely competent and committed professional. On the Thursday of the following week, something happened that would completely change the dynamic between them. Robert was cleaning the hallway near the surgical center when he heard an alarm go off. Staff began running in all directions, and he knew something serious was happening. Dr. William rushed out of one of the operating rooms, shouting instructions to the nursing team. There was blood on his lab coat, and a panicked expression Robert had never seen before. We need to transfer the patient to the ICU now, he yelled, and someone called Dr. Thompson immediately. That's when Robert noticed something that made his blood run cold. Dr. William's left hand was shaking violently, and there was an unnatural pallor to his face. The doctor was trying to hide it, but something was clearly wrong with him too. Amid the chaos that followed, doctors and nurses scrambling to save the emergency patient, Robert saw Dr. William subtly lean against the wall. He was clearly struggling to maintain his composure, but his body was betraying him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Robert approached carefully, pretending to just be cleaning the nearby area. Doctor, are you all right? Dr. William looked at him, and for a moment, Robert saw something in the arrogant doctor's eyes he never expected. Genuine fear. I'm fine, Dr. William lied, but his voice was weak. Doctor, with all due respect, you don't look well. Maybe you should sit down for a minute. I said I'm fine. Dr. William tried to regain his authoritative tone, but it came out as a desperate whisper. Just then, Dr. Emily appeared in the hallway, coming from the ICU where the patient had been taken. William, she called, we need you in the ICU now. The patient is... She stopped when she saw his expression. Are you okay? He mentioned feeling a bit unwell, Robert interjected gently. Dr. Emily stepped closer and immediately noticed what Robert had seen: the pallor, the tremor, the excessive sweating. William, sit down right now, she said firmly, guiding him to a nearby chair. Robert, can you get me a portable heart monitor? It's in the blue hallway cabinet. Robert ran to fetch the equipment, returning in less than 2 minutes. Dr. Emily was already checking Dr. William's blood pressure, and he now looked visibly weaker. William, when was the last time you ate? She asked as she attached the monitor's electrodes. I don't remember, he murmured. And sleep? A few hours, maybe 3 last night. Dr. Emily glanced at the heart monitor, and her expression turned serious. Robert, you need to call Dr. Richard right away. Tell him we have a medical emergency with one of the staff doctors. As Robert rushed to make the call, Dr. Emily continued monitoring Dr. William, who was now clearly in a critical medical state. When Dr. Richard arrived with an emergency team, the situation had stabilized, but Dr. William still needed to be taken for observation. Before being placed on the stretcher, He looked at Robert. "Thank you," he said softly, "just for the janitor to hear." Robert simply nodded, but he felt something shift deeply in his perception of Dr. William over the next 2 days while Dr. William was away for recovery and tests, and Robert couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The arrogant and cruel doctor who had humiliated him for years had shown a completely vulnerable side, and Robert had been one of the first to notice something was wrong. Most importantly, Dr. William had thanked him. It was the first time in 3 years the doctor had shown any form of recognition or gratitude toward Robert. Dr. Emily approached Robert at the end of the day on Friday to talk about what had happened. "Robert, I want to thank you for noticing. William wasn't well. If you hadn't brought it to my attention, the situation could have been much worse." "Anyone would have done the same, Doctor." "No, they wouldn't, especially considering how he treated you all these years. You could have just ignored it." Robert fell silent for a moment, reflecting on Dr. Emily's words. "Doctor, may I ask what happened to him?" "A combination of extreme stress, lack of sleep, poor diet, and..." She hesitated. "Some heart problems he'd been hiding." "Heart problems? A cardiologist with heart trouble?" The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Sometimes doctors are the worst patients, Robert. We ignore our own symptoms. Think. We're invincible. Will he be all right? With proper treatment and some lifestyle changes, yes, but he'll need to learn to manage stress better and take better care of himself. Over the weekend, Robert thought a lot about everything. A date had happened. For the first time, he saw Dr. William not as an antagonist in his life, but as a complex human being dealing with struggles Robert hadn't even imagined. He also thought about his own daughter and how she'd react when she learned he'd helped someone who had treated him poorly. Emma had always shown an impressive emotional wisdom for her age, and Robert suspected she'd encourage him to keep being compassionate no matter how others behaved. On Monday, Dr. William returned to the hospital. Robert saw him arrive in the morning and noticed the doctor seemed different, calmer, less hurried, with a slightly humbler demeanor. Their paths didn't cross that morning, but around lunchtime, Robert was cleaning near Dr. William's office when the doctor stepped out and saw him. "Robert," he called, making the janitor pause his work. "Yes, doctor. Can we talk for a moment?" Robert was surprised. In 3 years of working there, Dr. William had never asked to speak with him about anything other than a criticism or order. "Of course, doctor." Dr. William glanced around as if making sure they were relatively alone. "I want to thank you for what you did last Thursday." "I didn't do much, doctor. Anyone would have..." "No," Dr. William cut him off. "Anyone wouldn't have, especially considering how I treated you all these years." Robert stayed quiet, unsure how to respond to this unexpected admission. I haven't been a good person to you, Robert, and I want to apologize for that." The words seemed to come with great effort. Dr. Williams spoke slowly, as if each phrase required deliberate focus. "Doctor, everyone goes through hard times. That's no excuse." Dr. William interrupted again. "Hard times don't justify treating others cruelly. I knew what I was doing when I humiliated you publicly, and I did it anyway." Robert looked into the doctor's eyes and saw something he never had before. Genuine remorse. Why did you do it?" he asked carefully. Dr. William took a deep breath before answering. "Yeah, because I was angry at myself, and it was easier to take it out on you than to face my own problems, because my pride wouldn't let me admit that I'm also vulnerable, fallible, human." "What kind of problems, doctor? If you don't mind me asking." Dr. William hesitated, but something in Robert's genuinely concerned tone encouraged him to continue. "My marriage is falling apart. My son sees me as a cold, ambitious man, and I found out I have a heart condition that could end my surgical career." Robert felt a wave of empathy for the man in front of him. All those problems were exactly the kind of thing that could break anyone, no matter their social or professional standing. "I'm really sorry to hear that, doctor. And you know what the most ironic part of all this was?" Dr. William continued. "While I was looking down on you for being just a janitor. You were showing more humanity, compassion, and professionalism than I was. A doctor. Let me finish, please. I need to say this. On Thursday, when I wasn't feeling well, you were the first person to notice something was wrong. You could have pretended not to see, could have thought, serves him right. But instead, you cared about me, even after everything I did. Robert didn't know what to say. It was surreal to be having this conversation with the man who had been his daily source of torment for 3 years. Why did you do that, Robert? Why did you care about me? The question was direct and deserved an honest answer. Because I've learned that holding on to anger only hurts myself, Doctor. And because in that moment I didn't see the doctor who humiliated me. I saw a human being who needed help. Dr. William fell silent for a long moment, absorbing Robert's words. Where did you learn that kind of wisdom? Mostly from my daughter. She taught me that if someone is being cruel, it's probably because they're hurting, and that the only way to break a cycle of cruelty is by responding with kindness. How old is your daughter again? 12. And she taught you that? Among other things, yes. Doctor. William shook his head slowly, as if processing something hard to believe. A 12-year-old understands humanity better than a 52-year-old doctor. Doctor, age doesn't determine wisdom, and it's never too late to learn or change. Do you really believe that? That people can change? I do. If I didn't, I wouldn't have responded with kindness when you needed help. Dr. William looked at Robert with an expression mixing admiration and sadness. Robert, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. How do you keep that ability to see the good in people even when they treat you badly? Robert thought for a moment before answering. Doctor, when my wife and I separated, I became very bitter. I blamed everyone, including her, for what went wrong. My daughter noticed I was turning into a resentful person and told me something. That changed my life. What did she say? She said, Dad, when you stay mad at people, the one who suffers is you, not them. If you want to be happy, you have to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Dr. William was visibly moved by the words. A child said that? She did, and she was right. From that day on, I decided I wouldn't let other people's cruelty turn me into a cruel person too. That's a lesson I needed to hear a long time ago. The two fell silent. For a few seconds, each lost in their own thoughts. Robert, Dr. William finally said, I want to do more than just apologize. I want to try to make up for what I did to you somehow. Doctor, you don't have to. I do. Tell me, what is your daughter's dream besides becoming a doctor? She wants to study at a good university, do a residency in pediatrics, specialize so she can help children. And how do you plan to pay for her education? The question touched on one of Robert's biggest worries. The janitor's salary barely covered basic expenses. Paying for a private university was completely out of the question, and the chances of Emma getting a scholarship at a public university were slim, even though she was an excellent student. I don't know yet, Doctor. I'm saving what I can, but Robert, I know several people in the medical field who offer scholarships to talented young people from less privileged families. If your daughter really has the potential you say she does, I can introduce her to some of these programs. Robert felt a lump in his throat. It was the first time in years that someone had offered real hope for Emma's future. Doctor, that would be... I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. In fact, I should be thanking you for giving me the chance to do something good after so long doing bad things. But why would you do this for us? Doctor. William Harrison thought for a moment before answering. Because you showed me the kind of man I want to be again, and because your daughter deserves the same opportunities as any other bright child, no matter what her father does for a living. Robert felt tears welling up in his eyes. Not tears of sadness or humiliation, like so many other times in those hallways, but tears of gratitude and hope. Robert? Dr. William gently interrupted. If you don't mind, I'd like to meet your daughter. I want to see for myself this wise girl who taught her father things it took me 5 decades to learn. That night, Robert came home with a completely different energy. Emma, who was in the living room watching TV, immediately noticed the change in her father. "Dad, did something good happen at work today?" "Why do you ask?" "Because you're smiling in a way I haven't seen in a long time." Robert sat beside his daughter on the small living room couch. "Emma, remember that talk we had about forgiveness and kindness?" "I do. Today I saw a perfect example of how those things can change situations and people." Robert told Emma the whole story of the past few days, from the moment he had decided not to accept humiliation anymore to the conversation he'd had with Dr. William that afternoon. The girl listened quietly, her expression serious and attentive. "Dad, do you think he's really changed? Or is he just feeling guilty?" The question showed Emma's emotional maturity, her ability to analyze complex situations. "I'm not sure, sweetheart, but I know he was sincere when he apologized, and I know that no matter his motivations, I did the right thing by helping him when he needed it." "And he can really help with my college?" "Yes, he knows people who offer scholarships to talented students." Emma was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Of course. I'm proud of you. Not because Dr. Harrison finally recognized your worth, but because you never lost your kindness, even when you were being treated badly." Robert hugged his daughter, feeling deep emotion. At that moment, he realized all the pain and humiliation of the past years had been worth it, if the end result was this life lesson for both of them. "And, sweetheart?" "Yes, Dad." "Are you ready to meet Dr. Harrison? He'd like to meet you." "I am. And Dad?" "Go ahead." "I think you'll find he's not the only one who changed in this story. You've grown a lot too." Robert smiled, realizing his daughter was right. He was no longer the insecure and submissive man who had started working at Mercy General Hospital 3 years earlier. He had become someone who recognized his own worth and didn't let others define who he was. The following Tuesday, Dr. Williams sought out Robert during lunch hour. "Robert, is that invitation to meet your daughter still open?" "Of course, Doctor. She's very excited to meet you." "How about if I stop by your house Saturday afternoon?" "If it's not inconvenient." "It would be an honor to have you, Doctor." "And Robert, you can call me William. I think we're past excessive formalities now." For the rest of the week, the dynamics at the hospital continued shifting. Dr. William not only stopped humiliating Robert, but began treating him with genuine respect. Other staff members noticed the change, though no one dared comment directly. Dr. Emily, however, didn't miss the chance to speak with Robert about it. "Robert, I don't know what you did, but William is completely different now, not just with you, but with all the staff. I think he was going through a hard time and is finding a better way to handle it. You have incredible generosity, Robert. Someone else in your position might be seeking revenge right now, taking advantage of his vulnerability. What good would that do, Doctor? Revenge just perpetuates cycles of pain. I'd rather use this opportunity to build something positive." Dr. Emily looked at Robert with genuine admiration. "You should give lectures on emotional intelligence, Robert. Seriously, many professionals with university degrees could learn from you." "Thank you, Doctor. But everything I know, I learned from my daughter and from life." On Saturday, Dr. William arrived at Robert's house at 2 in the afternoon. It was a small home, but impeccably clean and organized, located in a modest neighborhood on the south side of New York. When he rang the bell, it was Emma who answered. "You must be Dr. William," she said with a polite smile. "And you must be Emma. Your father talks about you often. Please come in, Dad is making coffee." Dr. William stepped inside and immediately felt an atmosphere completely different from what he'd expected. Books were scattered around the living room, Emma's drawings hung on the walls, and there was a sense of home that his own mansion hadn't had in years. Robert appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Dr. William, welcome to our home." "Thank you for having me, Robert." That afternoon, Dr. William got to truly know Emma. The girl was exceptionally bright and mature for her age. But more than that, she had a genuine curiosity about medicine and a natural compassion for people that impressed the doctor. "Emma, why do you want to be a doctor?" he asked. "Because I want to help people who are suffering, and because I believe Everyone deserves access to quality medical care, no matter how much money they have. The answer echoed the words his own son Michael had said when choosing social medicine. For the first time, William saw value in that perspective rather than dismissing it as naive or idealistic. That's a very noble motivation, Emma. Doctor, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. My dad told me you've been going through a hard time lately. How are you handling it? The direct yet compassionate question from a 12-year-old left Dr. William momentarily speechless. He glanced at Robert, who simply smiled encouragingly. I'm learning to ask for help when I need it, and trying to be a better person. That's very brave, Emma said sincerely. Most people are afraid to admit when they're struggling. Why do you think that is? Because admitting we have problems means we don't have control over everything. And people like to believe they have control. Dr. William was struck by the depth of the observation. You're right, and I was one of those people. And now? Now I'm learning that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. During the 3 hours he spent at Robert's house, Dr. William experienced something he hadn't felt in years, the simplicity and authenticity of genuine human relationships. There was no pretense, competition, or power games, just people being real with each other. As he prepared to leave, Dr. William turned to Emma. Emma, I meant what I said about the scholarships. Next week I'll talk to some people about your case. Thank you so much, Doctor, but can I ask for one thing? Of course. If I get these opportunities, I want it to be because of my merit, not pity. I'm willing to work hard and prove I deserve it. Dr. William smiled, a genuine, warm smile. You can be sure it'll be exactly like that. And Emma? Yes? Keep that attitude. It'll take you far. When Dr. William left Robert's house that afternoon, he was deep in thought. The experience had been transformative in a way he hadn't expected. He had seen a living example of how education, character, and dignity had no direct connection to social status or financial power. Over the following week, Dr. William kept his promise. He contacted 3 different scholarship programs and an educational foundation that supported talented young people from low-income families. In every case, he mentioned Emma and her impressive combination of academic intelligence and emotional maturity. But the changes in Dr. William went beyond his actions toward Robert's family. His colleagues noticed he was more patient with mistakes, more collaborative in medical discussions, and genuinely interested in the well-being of all hospital staff. Dr. Emily remarked to Dr. Richard about the transformation. Richard, I don't know what happened to William, but he's unrecognizable, in a good way. I heard he had a deep conversation with Robert, our janitor. Robert? What could a janitor teach an experienced cardiologist? Apparently, a lot about humanity and humility. On Thursday of that week, Dr. William sought out Robert with good news. Robert, I have updates about Emma. Good news, I hope. Excellent news. The Medical Hope Foundation offered her a full scholarship, including university, medical residency, and even a monthly stipend for personal expenses. Robert's legs went weak. It was more than he had ever dreamed of. This is real. Completely real. They want to interview Emma this Saturday, but it's just a formality. Given her grades and the conversation I had with her, I'm sure she'll be accepted. Robert couldn't hold back his tears. Years of worry, sleepless nights thinking about his daughter's future, suddenly turned into real hope. William, I don't know how to thank you. Robert, Dr. William interrupted. You gave me back my humanity. I'm the one who should be thanking you. But the surprises didn't end there. Dr. William had made some other discoveries during the week. Robert, can I ask you about your education? Of course. How far did you go in school? I finished high school and did 2 years of chemical engineering at the State University. Dr. William stopped walking. You did 2 years of chemical engineering? I did. But when Emma was born, I had to drop out to work and support my family. And why did you never mention it? No one ever asked. And after so long, it didn't seem relevant. Dr. William fell silent for a moment, processing this information. Suddenly, many things made sense. Robert's knowledge of chemical compositions, his ability to solve complex maintenance problems, his impressive technical understanding. Robert, have you ever thought about going back to school? William asked. William, I'm 38 years old. It would be hard to start over now. Hard, but not impossible. And you have an advantage, life experience and real motivation. Do you really think it would be worth it? I think someone with your intelligence, dedication and hands-on experience could contribute so much to society in a role that better uses your talents. Robert grew thoughtful. The idea of returning to school had always been in the back of his mind, but it had always seemed like an impossible dream. I'll think about it, he finally said. Over the weekend, Robert had a long conversation with Emma about the possibility of going back to school. Dad, you should do it, she said, without hesitation. But it would be complicated. I'd have to study at night, work during the day. Dad, you've always told me that education is the one thing no one can take away from us. Why wouldn't that apply to you too? You're right. You always are. And Dad? Yeah? Imagine how amazing it would be if we both studied medicine at the same time. Me in undergrad, you maybe in a specialization or something. The idea of studying alongside Emma filled Robert with a motivation he hadn't felt in years. The following Monday, Robert went to see Dr. William with a decision made. William, I looked into programs for adults returning to school. I found some interesting options. That's great. What field are you considering? Actually, I was thinking about biomedical science. It combines my background with the hospital environment I've come to know. That's an excellent choice, and I can connect you with people in the field so you can get a clearer picture of the possibilities. You do that. Robert, after everything you've done for me, it's the least I can do. But there was another surprise Dr. William had been holding on to. Robert, there's something I need to tell you. I spoke with Dr. Richard about your situation here at the hospital. Robert's stomach dropped. Could it be that William was trying to get rid of him now that he'd apologized? He was impressed when he learned about your background and how you've solved so many technical problems here at the hospital without ever getting recognition for it. Oh, so he created a new position, technical assistant for the hospital maintenance department. The salary is nearly double what you make as a janitor, and your responsibilities would include overseeing the technical care of medical equipment. Robert had to lean against the wall to steady himself. You did this for me. We did it because you deserve it, Robert, and because the hospital needs capable, dedicated people like you in positions where they can contribute the most. I accept. Of course I accept. Great. You start in the new role next Monday. Over the following months, Robert's life changed dramatically. In his new position, he finally had the chance to use his technical training and hands-on experience. His colleagues quickly realized he had valuable knowledge and began consulting him regularly on complex issues. Emma was accepted into the scholarship program and started an intensive prep course for medical school entrance exams. Her teachers were impressed by her dedication and intelligence, confirming what Dr. William had noticed from their first meeting. Robert enrolled in a night program for biomedical science, balancing studies with work and his responsibilities as a father. It was challenging, but for the first time in years, he felt truly fulfilled. Dr. William also went through significant changes. He managed to save his marriage through couples therapy and honest conversations with Barbara. He reconnected with his son, Michael, learning to value his choice of social medicine. And most importantly, he developed a genuine friendship with Robert. 6 months after that first day, when Robert had refused to accept humiliation, Dr. William sought him out for a talk. Robert, I have a proposal for you. Go ahead. I'm organizing a mentorship program at the hospital where experienced professionals help staff develop their careers. I'd like you to be my co-coordinator. Me? But William, you have so much more experience. I have technical experience, Robert. But you have something it took me years to learn. The ability to see potential in people and treat them with dignity. Combining our skills could help so many people. Robert thought about the offer. It was a chance to use his own journey of overcoming adversity to help others in similar situations. I accept. It would be an honor to work with you on this project. And Robert, yes? Thank you for teaching me it's never too late to be a better person. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to prove my worth. A year later, the mentorship program had become one of the hospital's most successful. Dozens of staff members had been promoted, returned to school, or discovered new talents through the program. Emma had been accepted into the best medical school in New York City with a full scholarship. Her dream of becoming a pediatrician was closer than ever. Robert was in his final year of biomedical studies with excellent grades and internship offers at research labs. His transformation from janitor to technical assistant and then to co-coordinator of a major program had inspired many hospital employees. Dr. William had become one of the most respected figures at the hospital, not just for his medical expertise, but for his compassionate leadership. His relationship with Barbara was stronger than ever, and he developed a close friendship with Michael, learning to admire his son's work in social medicine. One Friday afternoon, nearly 2 years after that first transformative encounter, Robert and Dr. William were in the mentorship program's office, reviewing new participant cases. "Robert, do you remember that day when I mocked you for trying to clean that stain in the hallway?" "I do. Why do you ask?" "I keep thinking how different that moment could have been if I'd been the person I am today." "William, there's no use dwelling on the past. What matters is who you chose to become. You're right, but sometimes I wonder, what if you hadn't chosen kindness when I was cruel? What if you'd chosen revenge when I was vulnerable?" Robert stopped writing and looked at his friend. "Then I'd probably still be a bitter janitor. You'd still be an unhappy doctor. My daughter wouldn't have the opportunities she has now, and dozens of people at this hospital wouldn't have grown through our program." "That's exactly my point. One choice of yours didn't just change our lives, it changed so many others. William, it wasn't just my choice, it was yours too. You could have ignored your conscience, could have stayed arrogant even after recovering. But you chose to change. You know what amazes me most about all this?" "What?" "Your daughter was right from the start. She said if someone didn't see your worth, that was their problem, not yours. And she said, kindness breaks cycles of cruelty. A 12-year-old understood what took me 50 years to learn. Emma's always been special. But I think the true lesson is that wisdom can come from anywhere, from anyone. We just need to be open to listening." Dr. William nodded, reflecting on his friend's words. "Robert, can I ask you one last question?" "Of course." "If you could go back in time and avoid all the humiliation you went through, would you do it?" Robert thought carefully before answering. "I don't know. The humiliation was painful, but it taught me resilience. It taught me to value my own dignity, no matter what others thought. And in the end, it led to this friendship and all the opportunities that came from it." "So, you wouldn't change anything?" "I'd change one thing. I wish you hadn't had to suffer so much to discover who you really are. Your potential for goodness was always there, William. It just needed to be revealed." Dr. William smiled, feeling deep gratitude for the man who had transformed his life through a simple but powerful lesson, that true strength lies in responding to cruelty with compassion, to contempt with dignity, and to hatred with love. That evening, when Robert arrived home, Emma was studying for an anatomy exam. She looked up from her books when she heard her father come in. "Dad, how was work today?" "It was excellent, sweetheart." "As always." "Dad?" "Yes?" "Remember that talk we had 2 years ago about forgiveness and kindness?" "I do." "Did you know it would work? That responding with kindness would change everything?" Robert sat beside his daughter, as he had done so many times before. "I didn't, Emma. I just knew it was the right thing to do. Sometimes we do the right thing not because we know the outcome, but because it's who we choose to be. And are you happy with who you chose to be?" "Very happy, and proud of the daughter who taught me life's most important lessons." Emma smiled and went back to her studies. Robert watched her for a moment, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. From a humiliated janitor to a respected mentor. From a father worried about his daughter's future to a man who saw all her dreams become possible. From Dr. William's enemy to his closest friend. All because one day he had chosen to see humanity in someone who was being inhumane. All because he had chosen to break a cycle of cruelty with an act of compassion. And now, 2 years later, Robert knew the greatest lesson of his life wasn't about forgiveness or kindness. It was about the transformative power of choosing to be who you truly are, no matter how the world tries to define you. Dr. William had learned that lesson too, and together they were passing it on to as many as would listen, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one transformation at a time. Because in the end, Robert had discovered that the greatest victory wasn't in being recognized by others, but in recognizing yourself. And the greatest lesson he could teach was that it's never too late to choose to be a better version of who you are. The story ended not with revenge or humiliation, but with redemption and growth. Two men who discovered that their apparent differences, education, social status, economic power, were superficial compared to their essential similarities. The ability to learn, grow, and choose kindness over cruelty. And it had all begun with a janitor who refused to let humiliation define him, and a doctor who discovered that his true greatness wasn't in his superiority over others, but in his ability to recognize the worth in every person he met. 3 years after that first transformative day, Mercy General Hospital had become known not just for medical excellence, but for the culture of respect and dignity that Robert and Dr. William had helped build. Emma was in her second year of medical school, one of the top students in her class, already doing volunteer rotations in pediatrics and maintaining regular contact with Dr. William, who had become both a mentor and an additional father figure in her life. Robert had graduated with honors in biomedical science and was pursuing a specialization in laboratory diagnostics. His story had spread through academic circles as an inspiring example of resilience and determination. Dr. William, now 55, had become the director of the cardiology department and was widely respected not only as a physician, but as a compassionate leader. His transformation was often cited in seminars on hospital leadership. The mentorship program they had created together had expanded to other hospitals in the network, helping hundreds of staff members discover and develop their talents. But perhaps the most important legacy of this entire story was something less tangible, the living proof that people can change, that kindness is more powerful than cruelty, and that true greatness lies in lifting others up, not tearing them down. At a special hospital ceremony 3 years after his transformation began, Dr. William was invited to speak about leadership and personal growth. In his speech, he shared the full story of his journey with Robert, from the initial humiliations to the deep friendship that had developed between them. "The greatest lesson I've learned," he told an audience of doctors, nurses, and staff, "is that wisdom isn't found only in books or diplomas. It's in the people around us, if we're humble enough to listen. A janitor taught me more about humanity than all my years of medical training." When he finished his speech, Dr. William invited Robert to the stage. "Robert," he said, his voice slightly trembling, "you didn't just change my life, you changed the lives of everyone who works in this hospital. Thank you for teaching me that true medicine isn't just about healing bodies, but about caring for souls." Robert stepped onto the stage, looked at the standing ovation before him, and spoke the words that would become the motto of the hospital's mentorship program. "The greatest lesson I can share is simple. Every person has value, every job has dignity, and every soul has the potential for goodness. Our responsibility is to see that in others and help them see it in themselves." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of transformation and forgiveness. Do you believe people can truly change just as Dr. William did? Share your own experiences about second chances and overcoming hardships in the comments. If this story touched your heart and you'd like to see more inspiring stories like this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Your participation motivates us to keep sharing stories that make a difference.